Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pearls of Fisdom with Nirmal Bang. I'm Avan Dabash. Today, we're putting the spotlight on the auto space. We're going in the fast lane, and we want to discuss all of the milestones and projections that the auto sector, the rapidly growing auto sector, that is poised to hit. $300 billion by the year 2026 by various factors like rising income levels, urbanization, as well as increased purchasing power. And now, with the introduction of EVs, the game has changed. The auto sector has become a beacon of opportunity, and that's what we want to discuss with none other than Hormazd Sorabjee. He's the editor at Autocar India. Hormazd, thank you so much for taking time out. And I just want to talk about the sector as a whole because India's dominance within this space has only been highlighted by the fact that we are the largest manufacturer of two-wheelers. There's over 21 million units that's produced annually. We're the largest manufacturer of tractors. How have you looked at this progression within the auto space and the milestones that we've overcome?
Yeah, well, traditionally we've been a very large two-wheeler market. I think it's a function of population and also affordability. I mean, not everyone can afford a car, and really two-wheeler is the first real stepping stone to personal mobility. So that's really comes as no surprise. Of course, tractors, as you know, our economy is largely is so agriculture dependent as well. So I think clearly, even on the agri sector, obviously tractors are going to do well. But I think also we've seen passenger cars grow. We did 4.2 million cars last financial year, which was really a record. And so I think, it's obviously a function of the economy. Her times are good.
Times are certainly good, and even the government's initiative, be it the vehicle scrappage policy, the Bharat NCAP, there has been a lot done by the government that really underscores their commitment to innovation, to sustainability. How have you looked at the government's intervention? What more do you think needs to be done?
But I think actually the fact is that cars have actually become bikes, everything's become a lot more expensive actually because of all the regulation that's come in. Obviously, the regulation is good from a perspective of safety and environment as we go towards more global standards. But there's no denying the fact that it's pushed the prices of cars and bikes up dramatically, especially the jump from BS4 to BS6 and now 6.2, plus all the safety norms coming in, the 6 airbags and then the Bharat NCAP. Well, that's voluntary, but really, even when the safety norms went to global standards in 2019, it kind of weeded out all the unsafe cars, and all the new cars had to be built to a certain standard of safety, which again was very costly. So if you see the prices of two and four wheelers has shot up dramatically, and that's largely used because of all the regulation that's come in. So I think while regulation is good, one needs to make sure that it's properly let's say calibrated and phased in, because having everything together can be a bit of a challenge both for the automakers who have very little bandwidth or limited bandwidth to make all these changes in one shot, and it also pushes the price of cars up quite a bit.
We've seen India's drive towards electric vehicles really gain momentum. At one time we thought, when will we see those many green number plates? But now you're seeing them and you're spotting them quite a lot. You've seen a lot of companies come into this space with a vengeance, companies that are looking at very aggressive pricing strategies. What is the competitive landscape looking like when it comes to EVs?
Well, I think the boom in the EV market has taken a lot of people by surprise, especially those who didn't want to invest in it immediately. They were a bit skeptical: are we an EV market or not? But we jumped, almost doubled last financial year. EV sales almost doubled, nearly 1 lakh vehicle sales. EVs were sold, which is about 2.3 of the total market. Still a very small penetration, but just shows what the potential is there. And really, in terms of competition, right now, it's just one player, Tata Motors, which dominates the market, over 70-75% of market share, leaving the others to fight for the rest. But I think clearly next year, we're going to see many more serious players come in. You've got Maruti, you've got Mahindra, you've got Hyundai, all coming with their EVs, and these are mass market brands, and they're going to give competition to Tata Motors, which really has enjoyed an almost monopoly right now. But not that Tata Motors is standing still. They've also got a whole slew of products to make sure that they control their leadership. Really, we'll see some price wars in the EV space as more and more models get rolled out and the competition gets fiercer.
Okay. And then there's the likes of the big EV players like Tesla in India. There's the new policy, of course. There has been maybe roadblocks there, but how are you looking at the entry of bigger players within the space and the market share dynamics really shaping up?
So I think
JSW, MG, or their cars.
yeah. So I think there's the EV policy is there to it's been great for to attract new players in, because clearly the carrot they've dangled is that they're going to reduce the taxes on imports to 15% if companies invest over $500 million, which many will, because that's really the bare minimum to set up a huge manufacturing setup with full-scale manufacturing for a line of models. So I think it's going to benefit a lot. We've got Vietnamese player VinFast who's coming in. Obviously, this policy helps them. We've got Ford re-looking at the Indian market. Again, this policy helps them. Tesla, of course, everyone was expecting, but clearly Elon Musk has problems elsewhere. So the sense one gets is India is on hold for now. And obviously JSW, SAIC, that helps them as well, because they're going to be investing a lot more. And there's a whole slew of products they can get from the SAIC stable into India, which is imports at lower duty rates. So, it helps a lot for people to see the market. Of course, it's not a high volume game, because the import are capped to 8,000 units a year, which is not very much, but still, it's a good incentive for people to come. And I think in that sense, the EV policy works.
And then if we're completely shifting gears to talk about two-wheelers, there was Bajaj that announced that CNG bike launch just recently for the first time. India is going to see this, and that's going to be in the month of June. How are you looking at the acceptance toward a product like this? What does it mean for the other players?
Wheeler market hasn't had it as good as the four-wheeler market. As we know, it's still been under a lot of stress and pressure. Clearly at the the bottom end, things are a little bit more challenging, but I think we're going to come out of this. I think clearly, again, it's a very competitive market. Bajaj, of course, looking at all kinds of fuel options. CNG is one of them, as we know. They've got the new Pulsar. They've got a lot of products now coming out, and even on the electric side, they're slowly ramping up. But again, like most legacy players, having a calibrated approach, whilst the new startups like Ola and Ather, well, Ola particularly has just run away with the two-wheeler market, very, very dominant in it. Literally giving the a right product at the right price, because prices are also creeping up. These two-wheelers also not cheap anymore because of the regulation and the technology that there is. And of course, you've got Enfield fighting back with competition coming from Triumph and Harley Davidson.
Yep, not cheap for sure. And speaking of not cheap, Mercedes-Benz record half-yearly sales. The luxury market has really opened up. Are you seeing this emerging as a very strong area of growth? Which are the players that you think will really be at the forefront of capitalizing on this?
Yeah, definitely it's an area of growth, and I think this is one of the fastest growing segments. But again, one has to remember it's a very, very small base. Totally luxury segment is about 45,000 cars, which is really nothing. So it's about 1% of the total market. So really it's the pointy end of the car market, and a lot of potential for growth again. But unlikely to see that exponential growth until you really see per capita incomes increase, and there's really a huge kind of let's say the GDP levels really go up dramatically, because again these cars are very highly taxed, so that kind of subdues demand to a great extent. On some cars it's as much as 200% duty on the CBUs, and overall these cars, so again the impact of a weakening rupee as well as import duties, which have steadily gone up for over the years, has made sure these cars are still out of the reach of many.
Yeah, you're right. And what about how we stack up versus what it's like across the globe? Where is it from a tax perspective the most economical, if you could use that word, to purchase a car? And even in terms of the waiting period, how does India stand as compared to the rest of the globe?
India is probably longer than other markets. In a small market, we don't get the priority of the bigger markets. So waiting periods are typically longer. Manufacturers tend to prioritize their bigger markets with their products. So I think one disadvantage of being small is that you're kind of not up there in the queue as far as the waiting list goes from the global of brands. So for example, if Mercedes has a limitation on the GLS, which it does, clearly they'll serve other markets where the car is popular and sells in bigger numbers before coming to India, where the numbers are still small. And to be honest, even the margins are not that great, because in India being a very price sensitive market and the duties being so high, to make it competitive, manufacturers tend to work on thinner margins over here as they would elsewhere. And I think clearly our tax structure, coming to your first part of your question, there are countries which are more expensive. I mean, Singapore really is probably one of the most expensive, because they have a huge cost on that certain COE, which really pushes prices up. So we are also on the pricey side, but the cars where their duties are less are all the free markets, which is basically the US and Europe.
Okay, and what about the government considering that tax rate cut on hybrid vehicles? How much of a booster could this be?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that. We've not seen that happen yet, but I think that's definitely seems to be on the cards. There's been a lot of discussion around that front, but it remains to see if that will be done. Clearly, I don't think anything's going to happen until well after the elections. But I think logically it makes sense to give some benefit to hybrid cars, which are generally less polluting and less. How do I say? They are a lot more CO2 friendly than normal regular gasoline or diesel cars. So I think that way it does make sense to kind of give them a break.
Right. And what about the semiconductor shortage issue? Is that still a concern? Is a lot of that now behind us?
No, I think that's a lot of that is behind us. I think the supply issues kind of eased up. Maybe some few components there still are. But so what's happened with now the supply issue eased up? Suddenly we've seen that there's tends to be a bit of oversupply, and clearly there's market has got into a push mode. People are now dealers are having to kind of let's say stock a bit of inventory. Discounts have started. It's really like back to normal pre-COVID times, and clearly the market dynamics are clearly moving from let's say from a seller's market to more of a buyer's market, where let's say the capacity is in slightly in excess of the demand right now.
And what about the outlook when it comes to exports from the industry? How are they expected to grow over the next few years from the auto industry?
Well, exports is a big potential, but I think clearly in this area, Maruti is the one that's taken the lead. They truly are exporting globally some of the products over here. The others export to select markets which are common with India. It could be South Africa, something in Mexico, those sort of places, or parts of Africa, neighboring countries. But I think other than Maruti and maybe Hyundai to some extent, I don't think there's any company that really truly exports at a global scale. None of the Indian companies for sure. Tata and Maruti are purely, largely for the moment, purely domestic players.
Okay, I want to make it a little bit fun now. So just going to be like these quick one-word answers that you think of, okay? Hormazd, which according to you is the best EV car in the market right now?
Hyundai Ioniq 5. So I think that's really outstanding. Yeah. You like it?
Yeah, love it, love it. What about the best two-wheeler in terms of the best bike? I know, of course, there's different things that people are looking for, but according to you?
Well, I'm not too much of a bike guy, but I still like the KTM 390.
Okay. Best hatchback?
Best hatchback, I think iconic one for me, it's got to be the Swift, and there's a new one coming out.
Okay. You'll never buy a car if it doesn't have dash.
If it doesn't have old school, naturally aspirated engine, which is what I love.
Okay. The wildest or best car you've ever sat in?
Tough one, but I think maybe extreme, it would be the Pininfarina Battista, the fastest car I've ever driven, 358 kilometers an hour. So really wild, 1900 horsepower. So it doesn't get more extreme than that.
God, that's super thrilling. And which car do you own? Or cars?
A Porsche.
Okay. And finally, this is pearls of Fisdom. So what are your pearls of wisdom or any just industry insights that you garnered speaking to so many big voices within the auto space? Maybe a few things that you need to keep in mind when you're purchasing a car, say a first time purchase, or anything that you'd like to share, basically.
I think the industry, the key thing is to really understand your customer and adapt, because I think a lot of people think it's easier said than done. It's a very natural thing to say, but it's surprising how often it's the industry themselves or the car makers themselves who think they know what the customer needs, rather than asking the customer themselves. Classic case is on EVs, not, one is shoving them down customers' throats. There is a bit of a pushback right now because not everyone is charging. So I think that's what you need to do. I think companies that do that the best are Maruti and Toyota. That's why they're so successful. So, really understand your customer. That is number one. And when buying a new car, I think, you've got to kind of buy a car based on exactly what your need and purpose is. There's no point stretching your budget if you're not going to use it much. It'll just lie parked in your garage. At the same time, if you're going to be going long distance, regularly, there's no point buying a hatchback. So really, it is all understanding what your use case is before buying a car.
Okay, great having you with us. Thanks for being so candid, Hormazd, and you've really given us a deep insight into the auto space. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to never miss an update from Nirmal Bang.